when you teach people, it doesn't really matter about like how well you know Bitcoin or how well you know all the technicality, but when you want to share, when you want to teach, like you need to teach it from your heart, like teach it like why it's important for you, like what moves you. And for me myself, like what moved me is actually like the my own experience when okay, my own personal experience when PayPal, like closed my account, or like my own experience when I see back then in 1998, during the Asia crisis, like my parents has a lot of saving in this one bank, and then the bank got insolvent, and we lost our savings. So those are one of the moments that I found like, wow, our life is so fragile, and how if we are just keeping trusting the system like this, the system is so fragile. So you need to take care of yourself, like how you want to take care of yourself, and you need to learn about this thing. And if you share that from your heart, if you share from your own personal experience, that's usually what moves people, and that's when people start getting it. They don't have to know, like how uh like how the blockchain works and hashing and etc. They will, if they want to understand, they can learn about that, but uh, they need to understand the why aspect, and then to really know the why, you have to tell it from the heart.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we are here with a special guest from Indonesia, Dea Rezkitha. She is joining us, and I'm slightly ashamed to say this as our second guest, only our second guest from Southeast Asia. Our first guest was Win Koko Ong from Myanmar, who I actually just saw this weekend. But I'm super happy to have Dea with us today to discuss some of the work she does within the Bitcoin community and the Bitcoin industry in Indonesia, and to hopefully just give us a little bit of a backdrop on what things look like from a macroeconomic perspective in Indonesia right now. So they organized the Bitcoin Indonesia conference, which was, I think, the inaugural event was this past year, 2023. I heard some very cool things from some people who attended, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And then she also works for Fedimint. Fedimint is a really cool, I don't know that I would consider it a layer two, but it's basically a way for people to use Bitcoin in these sort of what are called federated economies, or sort of within certain groups of people. But we'll touch on that and expand a little bit more. So let me hand the mic over to you, Dea. Please let the audience know what I might have missed about you, and introduce yourself a bit if you don't mind.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Frank. Thank you so much for inviting me to come to this show. We met briefly in Ghana, so that was really fun. Like this is the fun thing about Bitcoin. You met people in many different countries. You met people from different part of the world, but yet we find ourselves having a lot of in common. Like finding your own tribe, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, so thank you. My name is Dea Rezkitha. I think Frank already covered everything, but apart from like organizing the conference and also working at Fedi, I also co-founded a, what is it called, like a portal to for Indonesian to learn about Bitcoin called Class Bitcoin.
Mm.
So this is like we just translate any Bitcoin education resource out there in Bahasa Indonesia, because in a lot of places, uh, most of the good Bitcoin content are in English, and you have to translate that in a local language, so with the local flair, so then people understand. So that's like what we are doing with the website Class Bitcoin. Yeah, and I guess also, yeah, just also like running meetups as well here in Bali. With
Mm.
we have meetups called Sunset and Bitcoin. That's every 21st of every month. So like if anyone uh, drop by, come to Bali, make sure that you join this meetup. There's also another activity that we set up, which is called the Bitcoin Beach Walk. So like we just start at the one beach, end up in the other beach drinking coconut. So that's a fun thing that we do every first of Friday. That is run by Kiplat, one of the community leaders here. Yeah.
Nice. That sounds quite inviting. Bali alone sounds like, everything I know of Bali to begin with sounds like good enough reason to visit, but those are two extra bonus reasons to visit for sure. Very, very, very cool. Excellent. So you're based in Bali. Did you grow up there? Is that home for you?
No, actually, I'm originally from different island from Java.
Mm.
I actually moved to Bali 10 years ago. And this is where I finally, get to know Bitcoin. I first learned about Bitcoin actually back in 2013 in Laos. Funny enough, like it was in
Mm.
Southeast Asian country, Laos. Like people probably don't hear much about it. And then yeah, like there is a coffee shop there that accept Bitcoin.
Mm.
But long story short, I moved to Bali, and I see a lot of people are using Bitcoin, and then I at that time, like, I need a way to receive money from my business, because I was organizing retreats, like yoga retreats, women's retreats, like that, in here in Bali. And then yeah, like receiving payment was really difficult back then, because like as Indonesian, we only have PayPal or bank
Okay.
transfer. That's the only two ways to receive payment. And that was really difficult, because I had also my experience where my PayPal account was frozen because they thought it was suspicious, and then they won't release my money until I fill out pages of form. So, and then I heard about Bitcoin, and then they say, like, well, you can accept payment through Bitcoin. So then I was like, okay, let's try this out. And yeah, managed to convince several clients to pay their retreat in Bitcoin. So
Nice.
that was like how I started to learn about Bitcoin. And Bali was such a great place, because so many expat here, so many digital nomads. So yeah, 2000, I think, like back in 2014 until 2019, I would say that Bali was the Bitcoin island, because so many
Mm.
places are actually accepting Bitcoin. But in
Mm.
2019, the government decided to ban Bitcoin payment. So then, and yeah, they actually like went to shops and then check if they actually receiving Bitcoin, then they will get fined. So a lot of people are scared, and then they took it off, but
Wow.
that was the journey. Like that Bali was such a great place. Like there's even a directory called Bit Island.
Mm.
It was like a website where you can just go there and then find out like what are the businesses that accept Bitcoin. So that
Mm.
was really interesting. And then like
Yeah.
fast forward, then you hear about El Salvador, or like Bitcoin Ekasi, that thing happened in Bali, and then like now it's happening in different part of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing these little pieces of history that are not as well known. Sometimes when I sit on like the adopting Bitcoin calls or something, they'll just get somebody on from some country somewhere that's like, "Oh yeah, we've been doing circular economy stuff since like 2013 or something," and you're like, "Wow!" Like they just weren't publicizing it or anything. But I think that there's something very familiar with your story in that you came to Bitcoin because of its very real world use case for you. It wasn't a speculative asset. It was literally my payment rails have been shut off via the traditional system. So I need this alternative system to continue doing my business. And a lot of people I speak with, I think it's like that. In the United States, things are a little bit differently. It's viewed as a bit more of just a speculative asset and not so much an alternative financial rails. I think that seems to be what it was for you. And I think looking at it differently, meaning like the asset versus the rails. It's really important to differentiate too, because you could receive those payments for Bitcoin for yoga retreats or women's retreats. You can keep some of the Bitcoin if you want. You can move it into a local currency or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But being able to simply use the rails to receive those payments is really one of the main features there. So that's super, super important. I want to zoom out a little bit more, and if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of what the macroeconomic, the economic, financial, whatever situation in Indonesia is right now. So, are people
Mm.
facing high inflation? How are people coping with that, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, Indonesia has a really long histories with inflation. As you know, that our smallest bill is actually 1,000 rupiah. That is, I don't know how many cents, but like the biggest one is 100,000
Mm.
rupiah, which is equal to $7. So
Mm.
so that's like how bad the currency in Indonesia, because we had two big event of hyperinflation. First in 1965, it was like around 600%, and then the second one during the Asian crisis, that was like around 60%.
Mm.
But yeah, the effect we still feel right now. So I always make a joke that everyone wants to be a millionaire and then they become millionaire here, because
Mm.
like to be a millionaire in Indonesia, that's equal to $70. 70 bucks
Wow.
is 1 million rupiah. Uh, but yeah, so Indonesia has yeah, in terms of like history, we had many hyperinflation situation that either caused by crisis or caused by bad economic policy, printing a lot of money. Back in the day, we also need to pay debt to like war debt to the Dutch before during the colonial era. So that's like contributed to the economy. But after Asia crisis until now, I would say like the economy, it's getting better,
Mm.
less volatile as before, but still, especially after 2020, now people start feeling that the inflation is going up. Uh, of course, the report says like it's 5%, uh, more than 2% that is being targeted, but like we see uh, like in several how do you say, like commodities or even things that we purchase, like doubles, like
Mm.
the gasoline, for example. Before it was around 7,000 per liter. Now it become 10 or even almost 15,000. So that's like almost
Mm.
double. But what is the difference before and now is that during that period of COVID, the government is raising up the gas price slowly. Like, okay, we raise 2%, and 2% is maybe 200 rupiah, which is like nothing. It's like maybe 1 cent or even less than 1 cent.
Mm.
And then we raise it again to 300 rupiah. So in the end, suddenly after 2 years, it's become almost double.
Wow.
So
Wow. It seems to be similar to the stories that I hear from people around the world. And I recently heard a statistic. I don't know. If, yeah, I believe I heard a statistic through a secondhand source that in Indonesia, more people own crypto assets than they own stocks.
mhm.
And I don't say Bitcoin. It might just be Bitcoin, but I heard the term crypto assets, so I'll break that down a little bit. So, first of all, is that true? Do you find that most people, as a means to preserve their wealth, are holding it in crypto assets versus holding like traditional equities or something like that?
Uh, Actually, more people owning gold than stocks. So the
Okay.
people here are very traditional. Like they see,
Mm.
like I think like the first investment that they will fine is gold, and then second is house. But housing is become very difficult now. So for millennials, they, especially after 2020, when everyone suddenly like being pushed to stay at home, and then what to do with their spare time, they just gone into crypto. Like, of course,
Mm,
some of them are having Bitcoin, but most of them are still using crypto as a speculative asset, and then they
mm,
trying to double triple their investment. But what I see the narration right now, I think people got burned after, when during the bear market, people got burned. They got scammed and etc. But this is a very Southeast Asian culture. Like Southeast Asian love to gamble, I have to say.
mm.
Like gambling, like in Indonesia, gambling is forbidden, but if there is a chance, people will use any different ways to gamble, right? So they now see crypto as a money game, like this is like gambling. And but what I see the narrative right now, like if you make a profit, you should put that in Bitcoin instead of cashing out. That's
Mm,
I found that like very interesting, because um, like I said, Indonesia currency is weak. So if we want to stack a lot of Bitcoin, and maybe doing it traditionally by putting maybe 10% of our income and then put in Bitcoin, we won't stack that much.
right.
But if you understand money game, if you understand Ponzi scheme, and then you use that knowledge, and then to stack more sat. I thought that's quite interesting, even though like I'm not what is it, I'm not promoting people to follow Ponzi scheme and
Right.
this money game and gambling, but it's just the reality. Like people use that to earn more, and then they stack their saving in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's, I think, thank you for sharing that reality. I think most people don't talk about that. That's the reality that working a regular job, I think everywhere. I live in New York City. For my previous job, I had a pretty decent salary. I won't say what it was, but it was substantial for basically anywhere else in the world. But I was able to put very little of that away each month, just because of the cost of living in a place like this. So it's, everything is relative. So if you're living in a place like New York City, you make a lot more money, but everything is more expensive. Taxes are very high in New York City, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's similar. So I think that mentality is very real. People think, well, I could sort of like gamble, learn this money game. I think money game is the perfect way you put it. It's literally, I think, a money game. And it's interesting because I've listened to sort of people who have been in the Bitcoin slash crypto space for a long time, like Kobe on Twitter, who actually said back in the day, that's how most people here openly talked about it as well. They're like, dude, I'm just trying to trade to get more Bitcoin. Like I'm just trading in and out of this other stuff to do that. And I think most people, it's almost like, okay, fine, if you want to do that, that's fine. Like, that if that's the game you want to play, everybody's sort of free to do what they want. And I get the mentality, but I think the danger sort of comes when we start talking about it all like it's all like investing or this or that. Like it's not. Like let's just call some of it what it is. Like when you're investing in a coin with a dog on it and it has no intrinsic value, let's not fool ourselves into what we're doing, and let's warn people of the risks. But I find that super interesting that you said it's sort of like a gambling culture, the Southeast Asian gambling culture, and people like it. There's a part of me that like I get it and it's sort of fun, but it's fun until it's not. Meaning
Yeah.
people can get very hurt, and it's like somebody is essentially left holding the bag. And the other side of this all is that no crypto asset in the history of cryptocurrency, which is since January 2009 when the first Bitcoin was mined, no cryptocurrency in two different bull markets has ever made subsequent highs against Bitcoin. So let me explain that. It's made higher, like Ethereum made a higher high in dollar terms, but not in Bitcoin terms. So if you had just held Bitcoin for a long period of time, technically, I'm not even saying this philosophically or whatever, you would have preserved more of your wealth by doing that. So if you're gambling out there, nobody can stop you. Gamble, enjoy your life, blah blah blah. But obviously, be careful and just know that there is only one. There's just Bitcoin in terms of like long term saving technology. So sorry about the little aside, but I think that I
No, but
appreciate the fact that you spoke about that.
no, but that's very true. Like, I mean, yeah, just to call what it is, I like that, to call it by exactly what it is,
Yeah,
not fooling
yeah,
yourself that is, oh, this picture of the ape pictures is an investment. No.
it's crazy, crazy. Yeah, it feels very very weird. As someone, I mean, I write about this and try to educate people about it for a living, and it's very hard because people like shiny things, and I'm not putting people down for that. They like new things, they like new technology, they like this. And Bitcoin, from what I've heard from a lot of people who have been in the space for a long time, it never really was shiny, meaning it sort of is a little bit more boring than all these fast new technologies, NFTs, ape pictures, all this stuff. But it's just meant to chug along, and it's still the greatest performing asset in the history of humankind. So like, like, it's really not boring when you think about the effect that it's having on people's lives, the positive effect that it's having on people's lives, people who are living in hyperinflationary environments, this and that. But as much as I sort of tell that to people, they're still just like, but I want to gamble, sort of thing. So it's a tough it just is what it is. It's human nature. It is what it is. So let's the other, actually, you just answered my other question. Let's dive into the Bitcoin conference. It sounds like you have a bit of a background. You said you were organizing retreats, yoga retreats, retreats for women. So you have some idea of what organizing people and events is like. And God bless your soul, because it's very difficult. It is extremely difficult. Yeah, I would imagine that organizing a conference probably aged you like a decade or something like that. But could you tell us, yeah, tell us about the process a little, and then how the conference went? Tell us a little bit about it, please. Yeah.
um yeah, actually, so the story was back in 2020. Okay, I stopped using Bitcoin in 2016, but I
Mm,
start really really learning about Bitcoin back in 2020, because it's such a shocking moment for a lot of people, right? And then you're just trying to understand why this is happening. And yeah, I went into a rabbit hole in 2020,
mm,
and managed to, for some reason, because I keep just talking about Bitcoin, and people are just like, well, can you teach me about Bitcoin? And
mm.
then, okay, I'm going to throw a class. But then other people also talking about Bitcoin, and then they throw their own class. So we thought, like, well, rather than you and I doing this thing, you know, separately, why don't we just get together and make a conference? So this is 2021. So we did our first online conference, actually, in 2021, and then we got like 1,000 people joining in.
Nice.
And then the year after, 2022, we want to do it in person, but at that time Indonesia was still implementing the COVID restriction, like a lot of hassle for people to travel. So we thought,
Mm,
okay, let's just keep still doing it online. So last year, 2023, is when we decided, like, okay, this is the year where when we're going to do that.
yeah,
So
cool.
the process was fun, but it was really tough because people haven't been to our in-person conference, and then there's so many conferences out there as well. So we
Yeah.
just like, okay, well, we're going to throw this. Whoever come, just come, and let's hang out and have fun. We got super lucky, got a bus because Jack Dorsey uh, want to become a speaker, and he actually, yeah, he actually want to come to Bali, but in the end, he got a board meeting, so then he cannot join it in person. I was
Uh,
quite sad about that,
mm,
but he keep come. He actually attending it online, and then we do like an online session with him.
Nice.
But other than that, like so many cool people attended. Like there was Alex Gladstein, there was Anita Posch, Stefan Livera, Samson Mao, Max Hillebrand, and yeah, many, like I think we got roughly around 60 speakers.
Cool.
Like, and
Cool.
we managed to have like two stages. We have a lot of like also Indonesian speakers there.
Nice.
Yeah, it was the feedback was really positive. Of course, the challenge is that like this is a conference that is run by a community, so it's a very grassroots level. It's not like a big corporation that trying to throw this event. So I think that the challenge is like everyone have their own job. So like we do this because we love to do this. This is our passion, but we also need to manage like our daily life.
Yeah,
uh,
of course. Yeah.
yeah, but it's rewarding, and we're really happy with the result, and yeah, we're excited to plan it again. Not sure yet if we are doing it this year.
Mm.
Probably next year. So we're gonna do it like every 2 years.
Okay. Cool. I also love that you mentioned that you had Indonesian speakers. And I think with these international conferences, having just gone to two of them, it's great to hear from people on the ground. And then also vice versa. I think it's probably true that maybe people in Indonesia want to hear from Alex Gladstein or whoever else, maybe they follow them online and they get to hear. But I think finding that right balance of like local people talking about maybe local issues that are being solved by Bitcoin, or people who are working on protocols or things locally. I think it's really important that those voices get to have a platform in front of those other bigger voices, to in front of those other people in the Bitcoin space who are maybe a little bit more well known. So that's great. Congratulations on doing it and making it a success. I can't imagine what it was like to book this and to deal with. It's hard. You're getting people to fly from all over the world to Indonesia, and obviously, you know, going to visit Bali or something. It's a good reason. Bitcoin conference, a good reason to go to somewhere like that. It's one of the most beautiful destinations for tourism in the world, but it's still a stressful thing. I used to organize events as well, and you have to lay out a lot of money, or there's a lot of money when it comes to like renting the venue and all the equipment and everything that you need to do. It's a huge endeavor. So if anybody listening is on the fence about maybe attending the Indonesia Bitcoin conference in whenever they do it again, keep in mind that you'll be supporting someone who's working very hard to try to broaden Bitcoin's reach. I was a bit jealous when I saw it. I have never been to Indonesia. I lived in Asia for a while and traveled
Mm,
around Southeast Asia a bit, but I haven't been. It was a bit difficult. I actually just started doing Bitcoin conferences and was in El Salvador and Ghana this year, and those were things I had planned on for a while. But hopefully, I will be over there at some point. I'm super.
yeah,
I was
I
watching the foot. Yeah.
yeah, it's a I guess like for me, reflecting back, there's so many conferences happening around the world. So like it's fun to like rotate it. Like maybe this year you're focusing on Latin America, and the next year you're focusing on Asia.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun to see all these little conferences popping up.
Yeah. And I think the word, it's interesting. I don't think you meant it this way, like little in terms of like small, but there's something to be said about how good some of the smaller or more intimate conferences are. I've never gone to the Bitcoin Magazine US conference, like the main Bitcoin conference, because I don't really want to sit in a room with 20,000 people and watch like a stadium. I just don't want to do it. So like when you go to Ghana or you go to probably Indonesia, I don't know how many people attended. I would imagine it was probably like 1,000 or less people, where you're able to really speak with all of the people who are there. You see them in the hallway, you talk with them. They're not like hiding in some backstage room somewhere where you can't speak with them. Maybe some of the bigger names, but I think that the intimacy of the smaller conferences is a really special thing, because otherwise, you're going to go to the bigger ones, and it's like a rock concert, or like a concert or something. Like, you're just in the audience spectating. You're not really involved in the discussions that are happening. And I think some of the smaller ones, I think when I saw the footage of Indonesia, I was like, yeah, that's like the type of conference I want to be at. That it looked really,
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean,
that's
I agree that I've been to big one and I've been to smaller one. The big one, of course, you love to see the production, but like the smaller one, this is the connection. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like in our conference, like we focus a lot on hanging out. So like every day we have like activities where people having a party, or like going out for a beer, or even like we throw like excursion. You go out and see Mount Batur sunrise in the volcano. So
Cool.
that kind of thing, it's what people will always remember. You don't really
Yeah.
remember the big stage. Like, you will remember the conversation, the connection.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%, and I commend you for doing it. Thank you for your efforts, and I hope to support you in the near future. Let's shift over to your work with Fedimint. So Fedimint is one of the things I'm most excited about. So it sort of takes away this idea of like one person holding their keys or their Bitcoin to a community holding a group of Bitcoin that can then be used within that community. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's too simplified of a way to describe it, but I think that the Fedimint model will be something that's probably more broadly adopted, obviously in places like Africa, where I think its founder is originally from Nigeria. Likely in Latin America, potentially in Southeast Asia as well. But you work with Fedimint. Could you explain a little bit about what Fedimint is, and then what you do within the organization?
Yeah, so Fedimint is actually a protocol that combine like many things. So there is an e-cash, there's also Lightning transaction there, on-chain transaction. There's also cryptography called Shamir sharing secrets, where the whole idea is actually um, to make like a circular economy within the community much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, when we talk about scaling Bitcoin, people all just think about Lightning, right?
Yep.
But there are many, many ways to scale Bitcoin. So Fedimin is one of the way, and we use those technology. And the reason is that with Lightning, there is a problem though. With Lightning,
Mm.
if you want everyone in the world to use Lightning, like the 7 billion people in the world wants to open and closing the channel, that
Yep.
will take like they will take probably 40 years for the UTXO to clear out, right? So
Totally.
it's
Yep.
there is still problems there. It good at some point, but if you want to scale it, if you think long term, then you will face this problem. And we already saw the problems right now with uh, when Bitcoin was, I mean, Bitcoin transaction fee was really high because the blocks was really full.
Yeah.
It's very hard to open and closing channel for
Yep.
Lightning Network. So using something like Fedimint, now you can do transaction easily because you are actually just sending out eCash within the
Yep.
community.
Yep.
And the difference is that we are not making different blockchain. We are not also what is it called, creating a new token. So
Right.
this is we just issuing eCash is basically an IOU of a Bitcoin that we put together in a pool, and this can work also within the community context. Like, so let's say you are a community of farmers that likes to do farmers market and then do transaction. Now, instead of like using like Lightning, you can also just sending money through eCash. So it's
Mm-hmm.
basically you just sending out IOUs, and yeah, you know you can manage to sending it really fast, cheap, and very private,
Yep.
because the focus here is actually privacy. Because like when people are using Fedimint, technically speaking, it's a very secure within the community. And using something like Fedimint is that the guardian or the people who are let's say managing the funds, like they will never know like who sent it to what, how many Bitcoin that they send it to other person. No one knows. All they know is
Yep.
just like, okay, this community have this much Bitcoin, but like no one knows who are the members, or like how who transact to who. So this is very secure and very private.
Uh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that for people who don't, so eCash was actually a technology. I think it was developed in the 1980s by someone named David Chaum, who's one of the early people who was in the sort of cryptography movement, the cypherpunk movement. It was a mailing list of people who were trying to come up with versions of digital cash. Eventually, Bitcoin became the thing that actually won and worked, but there were many iterations of it beforehand. And David Chaum's purpose was to preserve privacy. So what you're doing with creating with Fedimint is that you do have guardians. Basically, you have certain Bitcoin that's locked, and then you issue IOUs for that Bitcoin. But it's not like those guardians are then like, hey, why were you spending this many Bitcoin at the bar on Friday night or something like that? You can't necessarily see where the Bitcoin gets spent. So I think it's a really fascinating model for those who aren't as technically inclined. Lightning Network is a really interesting model, and what she was talking about with UTXOs is that essentially to use Lightning in a non-custodial manner. So if you're not using Wallet of Satoshi or Blink Wallet or something like that, you have to basically use the base chain to open up a channel. So even if you're using something like Phoenix Wallet or something, you're going to have to do that first on-chain transaction. And on-chain transactions will only get more expensive over time, especially now that we have things like ordinals. So we need something to essentially do a bigger batch transaction, and then many people can basically benefit from guardians holding those Bitcoin, then issuing IOUs for them. So it's an amazing model. I don't know how. I've heard people talk about potentially things like microfinance working on, in within a Fedimint system. So you talked about farmers. Would they be able to maybe like loan each other money through that system, or would that be a little bit too advanced for it?
Well, so I'm so Fedimint is the protocol, but I'm working for Fedi, which is the app that using the Fedimint protocol.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, I mean, like there are so many potential that you can do with Fedimint, because like I said, Fedimint works well with Lightning as well. So
Yeah.
if you can create, we in Fedi we have what we call Fedi mods. So within the app you can install like a mod that works with your community. So let's say
Mm.
you have these farmers, and then you want to do this microfinance. You
Yep.
can create a mod that will enable people to like, okay, let's like how we can distribute this payment, or like how you can do the saving. uh, as long as you can code, and then you can create like a simple web LN, you can
Okay.
create these mods, and that mods can work for your community.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we have cases where, oh yeah, you need to cash out your Bitcoin to let's say to your e-money. Let's say if your country has an e-money. So this we had this at the, I think you were in Ghana. So like if you use the Fedi app in
I
Ghana,
did. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, there's an option where you can actually sell that Bitcoin directly from the Fedi app,
Mm.
the eCash through Lightning, and then Lightning is actually converted to the e-money. So you can immediately spend your Bitcoin by using just one app. So that's very cool. This type of technology is possible, and like what Fedimint is doing is actually making it more smoothly and more accessible within the community.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the overview. Um, and I actually wasn't aware of your educational efforts. So my last question will be, what what is it like trying to educate people? So I give you a lot of credit. I worked as a language teacher for 12 years, working with immigrants, teaching English. Teaching is difficult. Translating is difficult. I used to do real time translation for parents and children in Spanish, and it's challenging. Um, but then there's also this other element of, you're talking about money, something that everyone is emotional about. Everyone, it's inevitable. Money is what essentially allows us to transact and keep ourselves alive in society. So you're playing this role of a teacher, of an organizer, of all these things, but you're educating people about a new form of money. I would imagine, obviously, half the people you reach out to think you're a scammer, or you're this or you're that, or you're a smart person. Why are you spending your life on this craziness? What's wrong with you? What happened to you? Um, what is the educational component like? And let's try to also focus on the positive things. Have you gotten through to people where they've come back to you and said, thank you? Teaching is often a thankless job. So what keeps you going when it comes to educating people?
Wow, that's a very good question, Frank. Um, I found like I think, of course, like you when you try to teach about Bitcoin, the subject is so huge, right?
Yeah,
Like you need to know about history, you need to know about thermodynamic, you need to know about
true.
physics, you need to know
Yeah,
about cryptography, mathematics. So there's so much that you can teach people. But I guess you're right. The most crucial thing is about money
yeah,
and time and energy. Those are the very basic things that people this is our common ground in any culture. People need money. People will always spend their time and energy to get money.
yep,
So if you from what I learned is that through my education session is that I always try to emphasize to them about the problems of inflation, the problems of printing money, like how it's actually affected our life and how it's actually affected, yeah, like our future as well. Like I always love showing people who attended the class at class Bitcoin. There's a picture from a menu from the 70s. It's like a very very like a local menu. Like we have the soup, that costs at that time it was 200 rupiah
yep,
for a bowl of soup. Now this bowl of soup it costs 25,000 rupiah nowadays. So from the 70s until now, the price has gone up. Uh, yeah, what 100% like 100 times, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, from 200. Yeah. So then it's like that also shows how much money that is being stole, and but I think what I feel for educator is that when you teach people, it doesn't really matter about like how well you know Bitcoin or how well you know all the technicality, but when you want to share, when you want to teach, like you need to teach it from the heart, like teach it like why it's important for you, like what moves you. And for me myself, like what moved me is actually like the my own experience when okay, my own personal experience when PayPal, like closed my account, or like my own experience when I see back then in 1998, during the Asia crisis, like my
mm,
parents has a lot of saving in this one bank, and then the bank got insolvent, and we lost our savings. So those are one of the moments that I found like, wow, our life is so fragile, and how if we are just keeping trusting the system like this, the system is so fragile. So you need to take care of yourself, like how you want to take care of yourself, and you need to learn about this thing.
yeah,
And if you share that from your heart, if you share from your own personal experience, that's usually what moves people, and that's when people start getting it. They don't have to know, like how uh like how the blockchain works and hashing and etc. They will, if they want to understand, they can learn about that. But
Yeah.
uh, they need to understand the why aspect, and then to really know the why, you have to tell it from the heart.
Yeah. That's beautifully put. And we will. I will leave it at there. I will leave it there. I think that's a really important way to put it. You have to, and I think to combine that with what other guests on this podcast have said, tell it from the heart and meet people where they're at. Figure out what problem they're trying to solve or whatever it is, and meet people where they're at. Try to speak it, whatever you're saying, sharing in a language that they'll understand, but speaking from your heart is a big part of that. Sharing something, especially personally, about how it's affected you, how it's benefited you. Makes it far less theoretical and technical and far more personal. So I think that that's a beautiful way to do it.
Yes.
Sincerely, thank you for joining us today. I want to open the floor before I leave. Any last thoughts or anything you'd like to share with the audience before before we part for today?
Sure. If anyone wants to connect, you can connect with me through Twitter. My handle is Dea Rezkitha, DeaRezkitha. My tweet is my own thought, so
Yeah,
just for it to the Indonesia Bitcoin Conference website is indonesiabitcoinconference.com. Like I said, we won't do this in 2024, but we will do it next year. We need to take a break. I think it's
yeah,
good to do
yeah,
it like every 2 years. So,
yep,
like with a fresh mind and fresh energy.
yep.
Yeah. So, and then if anyone come to Bali, please join us for the meetups. There is a Sunset and Bitcoin meetup every 21st,
Okay,
and then there is a Bitcoin beach walk every Friday, first Friday of every month. So you can find it on Eventbrite.
okay, cool. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sharing your story, the situation in Indonesia. I hope the listeners found this interesting. I surely did. And yes, we will be in touch. And as I said, I'm sure we'll cross paths, maybe at a conference this year, but obviously I hope to see you in Indonesia at the Bitcoin Indonesia conference when you do have the right energy and focus to bring it back to life. So thank you very much for all you do. It was a great pleasure to meet you in person in Ghana. Um, I really admire how it's a lot to put yourself out there in many different ways to organize events, like I said, to talk about Bitcoin, whatever it is. And I give you a lot of credit for doing it and becoming a big voice from your country. You come from a big country. For listeners who don't understand, Indonesia has a large population. It's one of the most populated countries on the planet. So you're talking with, you know, a person out of all those people who decided to sort of be the face of this, and there's a lot of pros and cons that come with that. So let's remember that. And thank you again, Dale, for joining us, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much, Frank.
My pleasure. All right, guys, take it easy. Talk soon. Bye bye.